Okay, everyone. Well, by my clock here, we are 5 past. So we're going to get started. And first and foremost, we would like to welcome everyone to this community engagement session for the proposed Apitamkiejit wind energy project. We would like to note that this presentation is being recorded and it will be posted in video format to our project website. And we will also be posting a written question and answer transcript as well. So we just wanted to go over a few rules of engagement for this evening. So we do ask that you please ensure that your name appears correctly. You will note that all participants are muted. This is to allow for any sort of background noise, things like that, to not come through during the presentation section of tonight. To ask a question, please type it into the chat. Our moderator, which is myself this evening, will read out all the questions in the order that they were received during the Q&A period. And if we do find that we need some follow-up, or if folks really do want to use a more verbal medium, we can unmute speakers as necessary. You can raise your hand, or we can simply follow up in the chat. Any question that is not answered within the allotted time tonight will be answered in a written format and posted to the project website along with all answered questions during today's meeting. If we find that there's a significant number of questions, then we will host another virtual engagement session or in-person engagement session, all again dependent on COVID restrictions. And just as a final reminder here before we really get into the meat of tonight, that this presentation as well as the question transcript is being recorded. At this moment, we would like to take some time for an acknowledgement. And today we will be talking about our proposed Apitamkiejit wind energy project, which is in unceded and surrendered Mi'kmaq, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. So this is a brief overview of today's events. Right now we're in this first section here of participant sign-on, rules of engagement, and acknowledgement. After this, we're going to do a brief introduction to the key team members here this evening, and then we'll really get into the presentation section. We think that the presentation will last about 20 minutes, so that allows for the bulk of this evening to be the question and answer period. So starting with our team members, I'm Sarah Rosenblatt. I'm one of the development managers, and this evening I will be acting as both the moderator as well as providing Q&A support. And we thought it was important for you folks to know where we're based and where we are this evening. So I'm calling in from my home just outside of Halifax, Nova Scotia. Also with us tonight is Jason Parise. He is our Senior Development Manager, and he will be one of the presenters this evening. And he is actually sitting in our office in Halifax. Mason Baker is our Technical Manager, and he is our second presenter this evening, and he is based in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Michael Carey is another development manager, and he is on this evening for Q&A support, and he is also based in Halifax. Stefan Karkulik is our CAO, and he is on this evening for Q&A support, and he is currently in Montreal, Quebec. Rory Cantwell is our CEO, and he is also on this evening for Q&A support and is also based here in Halifax. Billy Hannafin is our GIS technician. He is on this evening as well for Q&A support and is based out of our office in Halifax. And last but certainly not least, we have Kate Monroe, who is our communications and administrative coordinator. She is also on for Q&A support and is also based in Halifax. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Mason to get us going into the presentation section of this evening.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm the technical manager of SWEB, and I'm just here to give a brief overview of the company itself before Jason jumps into the more interesting project-specific side of things. So I'll start with the parent company. They are Web Energy. They're based in Austria. They're citizen-owned with over 4,500 investors. They actually kind of got in on the ground floor of renewables in mainland Europe about 20 to 25 years ago, and are of course still going strong. So group-wide, they have over 100 projects currently in development, spanning Europe, Canada, and the United States. The real MO of our company is to take on the whole life cycle of renewable energy projects. So that spans from early stage project development and permitting, community engagement and whatnot, into construction and engineering, all the way to operation for the lifetime of the project. SWEB Development is the North American arm of Web Energy, and we are based in Halifax, Nova Scotia, of course. And we've also got a small local office in Natick, Massachusetts. So something interesting here, I will touch on the projects we have operating in the Maritimes. We've also got projects in the northeastern United States and continue to develop in states such as Maine, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New York, etc. But really the bulk of the expertise in developing those projects comes from our Halifax office. So we're effectively exporting expertise from Halifax into the United States, developing and building projects there, and really bringing back the benefits of those projects back to the province and sustaining jobs here in Halifax. We really focus on community-oriented projects, which will become evident in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Awesome. So here you can see an overview of our operational projects in the Maritimes. We have ComFit projects spanning across the entire province. So what ComFit was the Community Feed-in Tariff program. So we are the largest operator of wind turbines as part of that program in the province. We've got 20 projects and 40 megawatts as part of that program. Additionally, we just took part in a public procurement in New Brunswick, and we have the 18 megawatt Wisconsin project in partnership with Woodstock First Nation there that came online a few years ago in 2019. And as I've mentioned previously, we continue development of wind and solar projects in these provinces as well as the northeastern United States. So here's another look at our Nova Scotia ComFit projects. So as I mentioned, 20 turbines throughout the province, developed and operated in partnership with local partners, Scotian Wind Inc. and Scotian Windfields Inc. And the real crux of that program was community benefit programs for the local communities where those turbines exist. And those relationships are still ongoing with various community members as part of that. So here you'll see a list of some of those community members or community beneficiaries that I mentioned. I won't bore you with the entire list, but one we're very proud of is the sponsorship of the Halifax Hawks Atom A hockey team. As a few of us grew up playing minor hockey, that was great to be involved with the team there. From there, I will pass it on to Jason Parise to talk about the rate-based procurement as well as the project itself.
Great, thanks, Mason. So kind of dialing into the rate-based program and essentially the impetus for projects like this one. So the province is transitioning towards a 80% renewable energy target by 2030, which is a fairly aggressive goal, and certainly makes Nova Scotia one of the leaders in Canada for the energy transition that we're all sort of hoping to see and working on together. So this current procurement is slated to procure up to 350 megawatts of new transmission-connected renewable energy low-impact projects. So what we anticipate is that these will mostly be wind projects in the province with some mix-ins of solar. Huge tenet of this project and procurement is partnering with Mi'kmaq communities here in Nova Scotia. So there's a lot of focus on that for the projects that you'll see that are built over the next 3 to 4 years here in the province. These projects have to reach commercial operation by 2025. So in about 3 years' time, most of these projects should reach commercial operation. So the Apitamkiejit project is slated to be roughly 38 to 96 megawatts, so between 7 and 22 turbines. We're still in the process of determining which turbine unit we'll use for the project site, but the ranges of the capacities are between 4.5 to 6 megawatts. So turbine technology has improved significantly over the last 10 years, and we're seeing turbines that can produce more power in a single unit than the ones that have been erected and commissioned here in Nova Scotia to date. The project will be located primarily on private land, but there is some crown land that we will be using for the project site. It's located south of Highway 210, and we'll have a map to show you in the preceding slide. And the reason why we picked this site is for a few kind of key factors among many others, but in general, this project is near Nova Scotia Power transmission lines. It looked to have a strong wind resource on site. In this area, it's fairly remote, so there aren't a lot of nearby receptors or dwellings or homes. And there's a lot of existing infrastructure directly on the project site, which is always something that we tend to focus on, is existing roads and cleared areas or already disturbed areas so that we minimize potential impacts from new wind energy projects. So the project area up in the northeast, near that Buckfield Road sign, that's essentially the county line between the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and Queens County. So the project is quite close to the nexus of those two counties. It's located south and southeast of Route 210, but really in that Buckfield area and Medway River Road area as well. So in terms of where we're at with the project, a fair bit of development work has occurred, and we'll run through the development timeline a bit later in the presentation for a bit greater context. Generally speaking, we've commenced collecting raw wind data on site by way of LiDAR and meteorological tower data. Environmental assessment field surveys commenced last year, so we've started a fair bit of the field work that's required to register an environmental assessment for a large-scale wind project such as this. Stakeholder engagement, which is always a central tenet of the projects that we develop here in Nova Scotia and elsewhere in North America and Europe. So that started in 2020, 2021, and we've engaged the municipalities in the area comprehensively and look and hope to continue engaging community members, First Nation community members, and other members at large throughout the region, throughout project development, construction, and operations, of course. So in terms of where we stand with the environmental assessment process, we're at this kind of first step, collecting baseline data, and we expect that we'll be finished that field work near the end of the coming summer, and we look to register the environmental assessment for this project sometime in August or September of this year. We'll continue to work with the community in terms of engagement on this process, and there'll be at least 2 more public engagement sessions that will be specific to the environmental assessment process over the summer months. And then once that's completed, we'll submit an impact assessment to the Nova Scotia Environment Branch, and various provincial government stakeholders and the public will have the opportunity to review and comment on the results or expected implications of the project as well. So the next few slides we thought would be pertinent to the community here around Queens County and Modal. These concerns we tend to see across all projects in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Maine, just given the topography and the type of forest cover that we see in the area as well. And we do have a fairly prominent ATV and snowmobile use throughout the area. One concern we've seen a bit more, particularly in areas like New Brunswick, northwest, northeast, and northern Nova Scotia, is concerns around plowing during the winter for site access. We've, in the past, worked quite closely with snowmobile clubs to ensure that if we do need to plow, which is quite rare, that we're in contact with the snowmobile club and work towards only plowing one side of the road to leave the rest of the trail open. And when we can, we tend to use track machines to get into the site, which usually just improves the snowmobile track system as well. Site access and traffic is typically a high concern for folks during the construction season for these projects. So typically with a larger wind farm, construction season would last anywhere between 8 to 18 months, depending on the size of the wind farm. Not a whole lot of construction occurs over the colder winter months. But throughout the spring, summer, and fall, there is a fair bit of activity, delivery of concrete, delivery of rebar, delivery of the turbine units. So what we do is work closely with the municipality and the province to determine a safe path to deliver different equipment and so on to site. And we'll also work closely with the community just to ensure that folks have a safety plan in place, there's signage in place so that folks will understand when we plan to do a lot of these deliveries, and they can have a better idea of what type of traffic to expect during that construction season. To address things like noise emanating or distributing from a wind turbine unit, we've always employed a minimum setback in Nova Scotia as a company of about 1 kilometer from all receptors. Typically in jurisdictions like Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Ontario, for example, setback distances are more towards the 500 to 750 meter range. But with Nova Scotia, we're fortunate that there is still a fair bit of onshore land availability for a project such as this, so we're able to distance our units a bit farther away from homes. And throughout the environmental assessment process, we'll conduct a full noise modeling study and acoustic modeling study, and we'll share that with the public for comment, and we'll look to solicit those comments and incorporate them into the project planning should there be any concerns. Lighting and shadow flicker can sometimes be a concern for community members, a bit more common in areas where dwellings are closer to the project wind farm. But nonetheless, we'll obtain all necessary permits from Transport Canada in terms of lighting for aerodromes and any sort of aviation activity in the area. So Transport Canada will mandate which lights we need, and those lights will be installed on the specific turbine units and synchronized. So that means that when they are flashing at night to notify any sort of aviation use that the units are in operation or in the area, they'll light all at the same time and shut off all at the same time. So it's synchronized that way. And then lastly, the shadow flicker piece. Those studies will be included in our environmental assessment process, and we'll be sharing those with the public once they're ready. We anticipate that a lot of those studies and so forth will be available throughout the summer of this year. For those who hunt in the area, we are currently working with our project landowners to get a better understanding of the use of their lands in the area for hunting. So we've always worked closely with the community to ensure that hunting can persist in the project site. Obviously, it's up to the discretion of the landowners to allow for hunting. So if there is site access granted to different community members to hunt, then that hunting can continue. All that we ask in the future when the project is operational is that community members act and abide by signage that is posted on site just for safety reasons. And just for peace of mind, we have several projects in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Maine that still have hunting occurring throughout the fall and winter. And it's not a significant concern of ours. So at the end of the contract term for projects, decommissioning of large turbine units is a concern for many jurisdictions in North America, actually. What we will be doing for this project and what we've done for previous projects is have a decommissioning bond set aside. So a bucket or port of funds that we'll use at the terminal end of the project life cycle. And those funds will be used to decommission the units and remediate the site to its current condition. Contractually, as part of this procurement, we'll be bound by a contract with Nova Scotia Power. So there'll be a fund set aside for up to $20,000 per megawatt, and that's roughly $1.92 million that will be set aside to decommission our wind turbines at the end of the 25-year operational phase. And it's probably important to note just for the community that in the interest of SWEB as a proponent, there is a lot of terminal value in turbine units. There's a lot of things like copper, raw materials, and steel. So there is significant value in recycling these units and the materials that they're comprised of. So who benefits from projects like this? In general, with wind and solar projects, we see a fairly large community of beneficiaries that emanate from projects like wind and solar. The benefits are typically direct or indirect. So direct benefits would be the purchasing of materials from turbine suppliers, concrete producers within the province, any rebar producers, but then indirect benefits are pretty common as well. So the use of services. So when we have construction teams in the region, they'll obviously go out and use services like hotels, restaurants, so on and so forth. And those would be a lot of those really great indirect benefits to the community. So it's quite economically driven, but definitely quite beneficial as well. A bit beyond that, in the periphery and kind of directly in terms of our project partners, a lot of folks will benefit that are from underrepresented communities, and any project partners that we bring online will obviously benefit. And we will look to have benefits spread out among First Nation communities in the province as well. And lastly, share of the project revenues will be used to support local community groups and underrepresented communities in the region. And with any wind or solar project, there is a significant offset of carbon dioxide emissions. I'm sure folks understand and know that our province is still pretty heavily reliant on traditional coal-fired and natural gas-fired electricity generation. So bringing on these new wind and solar projects helps to replace a lot of those carbon-intensive electricity producing items. And we think that with this project, on any given year, we'll be able to produce enough power for approximately 20,000 homes. The last slide relates to project development timeline, the construction timeline, and then the operations timeline. So we're sitting in this blue phase of the project, so project development, and anticipate that we'll be finishing up most of these major aspects by the end of this year. There will be some spillover into 2023, but generally speaking, we're of the understanding that we'll be able to commence construction if the project is awarded sometime in 2024 and plan to reach commercial operation by the end of 2025. So the operation phase for the project will be 25 years, and at the end of that 25 years, the company and Nova Scotia Power will revisit the project and determine if there's value in continuing production and repowering the project for a longer production term. But generally speaking, that's the crux of the project. So we'd like to move on to questions and answers.
Great. Thanks, Mason and Jason, for going through the presentation section. So folks, we do ask that if you can type your questions into the chat, that would be great. It allows us to keep a written record of the questions that were asked this evening. And just as a reminder, again, all questions and answers will be posted in a written format and put to our project website. So I'm going to give folks a few minutes here. We don't have any questions as of right now in the chat. I will check our Q&A function too, just in case somebody went there. But we'll just give folks a few minutes here if there are questions to just put them in the chat. Okay, so first question here, will this have any impact on the local airport a few kilometers away? So I'll start addressing that, and maybe Jason, if you can probably follow up there, that would be great. So we have already submitted a preliminary determination to Transport as well as Navigations Canada. We did note the local aerodrome nearby. At this point, it shouldn't have any impact on the airport itself, except for the aeronautical lighting that will be required on the turbine towers themselves. So we will need to implement the lighting that is addressed by Transport Canada and Navigations Canada. Outside of that, there should be no physical impact to the airport.
Yeah, and beyond the NavCan and Transport Canada applications and that review process, so just for the community's sake, other stakeholders that are engaged as part of that process are the Department of National Defense. The RCMP has some communications units that have to go through a screening process as well. Environment Canada is part of that as well, Canadian Coast Guard, and then NavCan will sort of encompass the discussions with some of those stakeholders as well in their assessment of any sort of communications and whatnot.
So again, here, just going to give folks a few more minutes to feel free to put any questions into the chat, and yeah, we'll address them as they come in. So we did have a comment come in here just saying, thanks for the presentation. It was quite informative, and certainly always happy to engage with anyone. What I will do now is just put up all of of our information here. So if at any point in time anybody from the community would like any more information on the project, they can certainly reach out to me. My direct line, as well as our project website and our project email, is up on the slide. And if you're just looking for more information about SWEB, we've also put our company contact information on the slide here as well. We also know that not everybody works in a digital format. So if there is anything that folks would like in a hard copy, we'd certainly be able to print and mail and make sure that folks get all the information that they need in the format that they need it. So I'll leave this slide up here for the time being, just so that folks can write down any contact information. And again, all of this information is on our project website and will be included in this presentation that's posted as well.
I think we received a question in the Q&A section.
Okay. Let me just get there. All right. So the proposed turbines are the largest in Nova Scotia so far. They could be 200 meters in total length. Do you expect turbines to be visible from existing homes in the area? So I'll start with that. And so there's a few things to address this question. So the first thing is we employ setbacks of at least 1 kilometer. And by doing so, that actually greatly reduces any sort of visual impacts that folks would be able to see. On top of that, what we also do in addition to setbacks is run a full visual analysis. So this is part of the environmental assessment process, and we will take essentially vantage points and viewpoints from various locations in and around site, as well as in the surrounding areas, to essentially create renderings to get an understanding of what will be visible from what angles, and then that allows us to understand as well any sort of impacts for shadow flicker or lighting, and so on and so forth. I don't know, Jason or Stefan, if you had anything to add, or Mason.
I think it's important to note that as part of the EA process, there'll be lots of that information shared. A lot of it's sort of predicated on things like the ground elevation and how far homes are from the site. But more often than not, with a taller turbine, they will be visible from somewhere around the project site. But we'll be happy to share that study once we do have it available.
So another one into the chat here. May I suggest that due to the fact that this is a very rural area, you might consider a meeting in a physical area. Many of the residents are probably unaware of this meeting. In lieu of a public meeting, perhaps a householder mail out to people in the Greenfield through Chelsea area, cost would be minimal. So yeah, this is just the first stop on a series of engagements that we plan to do, and various forms of advertising through local newspapers, as well as direct mail, again, any sort of online presence as well. So we are certainly always happy to host another engagement session, and certainly happy to do in-person sessions as well.
As part of the environmental assessment process too, we're prescribed to hold in-person meetings as well to seek approval. I think it's around 2 that's prescribed, but in the past we've done double that just to make sure everyone's aware of what's going on, and we typically continue to hold meetings throughout the project construction as well if needed.
Yeah, and just one more, thing to note, if folks have any ideas as to what, the best places to post about this public meeting is, it could be a local legion that everybody visits, and, they might have a cork board there. We'd be happy to, have one of our own team members come and make sure that everything is posted in a physical format. Whatever works, we're always happy to get the notices out there.
Yeah, and Darlene, as mayor of RQM, it'd be great if you could suggest a good spot to hold that meeting as well.
And just saw this note here, Stu's Convenience in Greenfield is the central spot. We will note this for sure and make sure that we have a poster there, as well as the Greenfield Rec Center being a great location to host a meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead, Mason.
I was just saying thanks.
Oh. So we do have another question in the Q&A side. What percentage of the landowners in the proposed wind farm area have been receptive to wind turbines on their land? So I can answer that one. The majority of folks in the area, specifically private landowners that we have talked to, have been receptive to not only turbines, but also access roads and corridors for the power lines. There are some folks who do not want to be involved in the project itself, but are not, basically have said that they don't want to prevent any neighbors from being able to participate. We haven't yet come across any private local landowners who have been, opposed really to the project. So just another comment here from the chat. The fire department Facebook pages are highly followed by residents, and there is also a large percentage of seasonal residents in the area who would not be around if the meetings were held in the off season. So that's great news as well. We'll definitely plan to host some in the summer months when we see that seasonal population return to the area. Great, thanks, Darlene. I'm just seeing here that some folks are starting to sign off. Our team will remain online for the next 10 minutes or so, just to act as a grace period in case there are any other questions that are posted to the chat or to the Q&A. Great. Yep. Thanks, folks. Always happy to chat in person, and have a great night as you're signing off here. Okay, folks, I don't see any more questions coming in. So just want to thank everybody for attending tonight. And again, if there are any other questions in the future, please feel free to reach out.